Hey everyone, and welcome to the 11th episode in the Tile Game series. Today we're going to be adding in the Shopkeeper. Finally, that took enough episodes, but we'll be adding in the main kind of UI for the Shopkeeper, and we'll be adding in the button scrolling, which is a little bit more complex than it may seem, because the buttons can actually infinitely scroll to allow for an infinite amount of items in the shop. So yeah, it's a really cool system. Make sure you hit that like button and consider subscribing to help out this series. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so now that we have the money counter working so we can see our money, let's actually make it to where we can use our money and buy stuff in the shop. In the Shopkeeper, add a WinGreen flag clicked and make a new custom block called Reset, and make sure you click on Run Screen Without Refresh and OK. Now run that reset here. So we'll start by switching costume to idle 0, so that way it looks like the correct costume. Then we want to go to front, so it's in front of everything. Set the size to 250, so it's big, and then we want to hide. We want to also set the rotation style to left right, and that's good for now. Now add a when I receive position NPC, which is a new broadcast message. This will actually make the NPC spawn right by the player. So we want to go ahead and pull in the positioning from the player. So scroll around until you find this right here and pull this into the Shopkeeper, except you can remove this right here. So now it's automatically created the X and Y variables for us. Then we want to go ahead and go into the item drop and find the script that makes it go off screen, which is this right here. So pull that in there, and then you can just use that custom block here. So do go to in here and put the X and Y. Okay, so now we have it to where it will position and make it hide when it's off screen, which is good. So we can actually use that position now. So in player, we need to save the position where it originally spawned. So add a variable called player spawn X for the sprite only. Copy that and then make another one called player spawn Y, also for the sprite only. Now on the bottom here, go ahead and set the player spawn X to its X right here, and then set its player spawn Y to the Y. That way it remembers where it was before we move it to the left. So player spawn Y to Y. So this will keep track of the very center of the spawn platform. Now in the Shopkeeper, we want to set the X to that variable. Backdrop a stage, change it to player spawn X. Then we want to make it move 2 tiles to the right. So add on to this the tile move step of tile manager. So tile move step of tile manager times 2 to make it go right to the 2. What am I saying? To make it go 2 to the right, and put that in there. Then the Y will just be the player spawn Y of player, and that is actually good. And make sure you actually do Y here. Then you want to make sure you show it so it actually will pop up, and for now that should be good. So let's test this out. Hopefully if we've done everything correctly. Wait, no, we didn't actually ever position the NPC. So in the player here, right after the generate world, add a position NPC and wait. Now if we start this game, the NPC should pop up. Yes, look at this. The NPC popped up right here and it is positioned correctly. And if we go off screen, it will hide and everything looks good. So, and it'll spawn on the platform and you can't mine underneath it and make it weird. So yeah, this is working properly. Also, don't forget to set the money to 0 in the very beginning of the player loop. That way we don't keep the money. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add a new variable that'll keep track of if it's a clone or not. Add a new variable called ID for the sprite only. In the very beginning, reset the ID to sprite because it's a sprite. Wow. Now we want to go ahead and in this tick here, add an if else and check if the ID is a sprite. So that way only the original one can do this. So copy and paste the sprite in here. Then you want to go ahead and add a point towards player. Then you want to go ahead and make a custom block called animation controller like this, and then click OK and run that block right here. So this will make the player, or not the player, the Shopkeeper animate. Now we need to make a for the sprite only variable called costume like this, and set that costume to 0 in the beginning, and then change that costume by 0.15 here. So this will make it animate. Now we want to switch costume to 1 plus floor of the costume, and then take the floor of the costume part mod 3. So this is the starting costume, which is number 1. Then this is the total amount of costumes, which is 3. So it should be animated now if we start this game, and it should also look at the player. So you can see now, yep, look at this. It is correctly animating. It's just doing the idle, and if we go to the right, okay, there we go. He looks at the player, which is very good. It makes him look like he's actually alive. So yeah, that's cool. Let's make him animate into this frame when you're nearby. So go ahead and do an if else and check make a for the sprite only variable called interaction range like this, and check if that is equal to true. So if we're in range to interact, then you can go ahead and switch costume to the one that makes him wave. Otherwise, we can do the animation normally. Then we want to go ahead and make a custom block called open/close UI. This will actually manage the interaction range and stuff, and click OK and run that right here. Now inside of there, let's go ahead and set the is an interaction range variable to the distance to player. Where's that at? Right here. Is less than, make another new variable. We're making a lot of variables. Interaction distance. So if it's less than the interaction distance, it'll set it to true. Let's also make the shopkeeper get brighter when you're close. So just set the brightness effect to is an interaction range times 25. So if we are in the range, it'll be brighter. Let's now set the interaction distance in the beginning to 1.5 tiles. So to do that, go ahead and do the backdrop of stage. Change this to tile manager, tile move step of tile manager times 1.5, which is 1.5 tiles. Take that times 1.5. So now it should make him wave when you're nearby and also get a little brighter. Okay, so as you can see here, he's normally animating, and then when we get within 1.5 tiles, he kind of says hi or whatever, and he gets a little brighter. Okay, so this is working great. So now we can actually use all those variables to make it to where we can press E and open up the shop. So first we need to actually create the shop UI. So make a custom block called create shop UI with run screen without refresh ticked. Where'd that go? It's not even there. Hold up, let me reload. Okay, it's here now. And now at the very bottom, go ahead and do that, and then make sure you set the ID back to sprite after this, because we'll have to change it to make the clones. Okay, so now in the create shop UI, go ahead and set the ID variable, which is the ID of it, to background first, which is the background sprite. Create a clone of myself, duplicate this, and then set the sprite to character, which is the little thing in the right that says hello. Then we want to do speech bubble, like this, which is, surprise, surprise, a speech bubble. Now let's make sure we hide them after we've created them. So add a new message called hide shop, and then do and wait here. Now we want to go ahead and do when I receive the hide shop, check if we're the sprite, and if we are, then we don't do anything for now, otherwise we hide. Now we want to make a for the sprite only variable called is shop open like this, and then we want to set it is shop open to false here because we close it. And in the beginning, you also want to set it to false because it's closed. Now let's make it openable. So add a broadcast message here and do shopkeeper start like this. And when I receive that, we want to forever check if the E key is pressed, which is the interaction key for this game. You can change it to whatever you'd like. If it is, then we'll wait until we're not pressing that interaction key so we can't break it and spam it. Then we want to make sure we're actually in range. So add another if and check if the interaction range is equal to true. In interaction range is equal to true. Then add one more if else in here and check if is shop is open is equal to false. So if it's not open, then we'll add a broadcast, a new one called show shop. Then otherwise, we'll go ahead and do hide shop because it's already open. Now in the show shop, we need to actually show all the clones. So duplicate this part right here and then do true. So if it's the sprite doing it, then it'll show it. Then we want to make sure it's the correct clone, so duplicate all this and check if the clone ID is equal to the background or the ID is equal to, you need to duplicate this again and then do character. So if it's a character, or it is equal to the speech bubble, or I'm sorry, not the background, just the character and speech bubble. Then we want to go ahead and just show and clear the graphic effects so it pops up, and set the X to 500, which will make it smoothly go on screen. Otherwise, we duplicate all of this stuff and then check an if else in here and put the if ID is equal to background. So if it's the background, then we want to go ahead and set the ghost effect to 100%, so that way it'll fade in. Repeat 5 times. Change the ghost effect by -20 so it fades back in. Repeat 5, not 10, sorry, and then clear graphic effects. Else we can just set the X to -200, which is the buttons, once we add them, of course. Now we want to go ahead and do a when I start as a clone to actually set up the clones. We want to first show, clear the graphic effects, set size to 100 and go to 0, 0 so it resets everything. Then we want to duplicate all of this stuff and just take out that and start with the if ID is equal to background. If it is, then we want to switch costume to the background. Then we want to go to front so that way it's in front, of course. Put this in here and then just do the character. And if it's the character, then we want to go to front as well. Set the size to 500 so it's a little bigger than the other ones. Point direction -90 so it faces to the left. And then let's make it move to the right. So first we need to add a variable called touching mouse like this. Then we want to go ahead and forever set that touching mouse down here to touching mouse pointer. Then we want to change the X by 150 minus its current X position times 0.5 so it moves over to the right. Then let's make it move up a little bit when you hover over it. So change the Y by touching mouse times 5 like this. Then you subtract off the Y position like this. Then you take all that times 0.5 so it smooths it out. Lastly, we can change size by, that way it gets bigger when you hover over it. So go ahead and duplicate all of this, change this input to size down here, and then take that times 55 and add on 1000 to it. Like this. Lastly, run the animation controller so it animates. Okay, so now we need to program the speech bubble. So add an if else and do ID equals speech bubble. Switch costume to the speech bubble, of course. Go to the front layer so it's not behind anything. Then we want to duplicate this X thing here so it moves over to the shopkeeper icon. Then we want to make it bob up and down, which is a very thick algorithm. So you want to go ahead and do a change Y by all this and then do Y instead. Then you want to go ahead and add 120 so it moves up a little bit to the sign of timer times 100, then take all that times 8, then put that in the right side of the plus 120, and all of this will make it flow up and down. Okay, so if we've done everything correctly, when we click E on the shopkeeper, it should pop up the preview in the background. Look at this, when we open it, there we go, this slides in, as you can see, the background slides in, the welcome thing pops up, and the player is here, and we can hover over it and it gets bigger, and it's also animating. The size is just being set incorrectly. Okay, that's because I actually did 100 here, not 1000. So now, there we go, it's big, and we can hover over, and also the welcome is not in the correct direction. Go ahead and put point direction 90 in here, and then move it up to here. Okay, so now you can see that this is actually correct, but we can actually move when the shop is open, so that's a little bad. So inside of the player and the movement here, we can check if the input is 0, and we can change this to an input 0 or backdrop of stage and change this to backdrop of shopkeeper, and then put in is shop open here is equal to true. So if it is equal to true, then we won't be able to do this. Let's also pull this into the selector. That way we can't mine and stuff. So inside of the tick position tiles, go ahead and add an if else in here and check if all that stuff is true, otherwise do that. And then if it is equal to true, then we just do the default selector. I open it up, I cannot move, and I can hit, but I can't mine, and I also wouldn't be able to place tiles. Okay, so let's make it to where you can't actually do the animation for mining either. So duplicate this once again and scroll around till you find the animation for the hitting, which is over here. So go ahead and just put an and in here and then put that in there like so. Now you want to check if it is equal to false. Okay, so now you should see that we can't do the animation thing either. Okay, so we can do it normally, we can mine, then when we open it, there we go, I'm clicking, but I can't do anything. Okay, so now onto the trickier part of the shopkeeper. We need to make all the buttons where you can actually buy it, which is the whole point of it. Okay, so let's start by making a custom block called create shop buttons like this, and this will actually create all the buttons and run screen without refresh. Now you want to go ahead and put this by the other create clones, which is right here, and run this right underneath here. Now you want to make a custom block called shop item amount and set that to 6. We're basically making the tile scrolling except for the shop because it'll infinitely scroll. Then make another one called shop item list ID, set that one to 1. Then make another new one called shop item Y for the sprite only, and then set that to 150. Set the ID to item by, then make one last for the sprite only variable called item move step like this, and set that item move step to 60, which is just the spacing in between the items. Now we want to repeat the item shop amount, create a clone of myself, so it makes a new one, change shop item Y by 0 minus the item move step, change the shop list ID by 1, which is right here, change it by 1. We want to go ahead and in this else, go to front and then switch costume to null, which is just this empty looking one. That way it just doesn't have any costume for now. So now let's make this all actually work. So do a when I receive tick colon UI, and we need to actually broadcast that. So in the backdrops here, underneath all this, do tick UI. Then in the shopkeeper here, go ahead and check if the ID is equal to that. What did we name it? I already forgot. The item buy thing. So if it's equal to the item buy, then we can do all this. Then we need to go ahead and make this loop. So make a custom block called loop item like this with a input Y. Click OK, and then we want to run that loop item and put in the input for the shop item Y. Now this is actually pretty much the same thing as the tile manager looping and all that. So make a for the sprite only variable called item loop cap like this, and set that item loop cap to shop item amount, which is the amount of items on the screen at a time. Then you want to take that times the item move step, which is the amount it moves, times 0.5. So that way it halves the item move step part. Then put that in here. Now we want to actually check if we've passed the loop cap. So if the Y is greater than the item loop cap variable, then we want to go ahead and change the shop item Y by 0 minus, duplicate all this and take out the 0.5. So it should see shop item amount times item move step. Then you want to duplicate this and change the Y by all of that. Lastly, you want to change the shop item list ID by shop item amount. So this is if we are looping up, and then it needs to go down. So now let's do the opposite. So duplicate all this and then do if the 0 minus Y is greater than the loop cap, and just do an if here. Then we want to take out the 0 minus and put that in here. Then same for this guy. And then we just want to do 0 minus the item shop amount in the bottom. So this will make it loop correctly. So let's also make it to where this will position correctly. Duplicate this part, all of this up here, and then put that in there like so. Then we want to go ahead and put a plus in here and do -125 plus the touching mouse, which I can never find. Whatever, I'm just gonna look it up. To the touching mouse times 5, so that way it'll increase if we're actually hovering over it. And instead of this right here, just change this to the shop item Y like this, minus Y position times 0.2. So that way it'll smoothly go to the Y position. Okay, and I actually messed up in the create shop buttons. I set the item amount twice, and I actually want to do the shop item list ID here. Okay, so now hopefully if we go ahead and start this, we should see that we see some buttons. Okay, yes, look at this. They go to the right and we can hover over them, and there's 6 of them. Okay, so that's good. The direction is weird though, so let's go ahead and make sure we do a point in direction 90 in the very beginning here. Nope, they are not. Okay, so let's do a point in direction 90 then in the bottom there, which is for the items in the shop. Okay, so now this is working correctly. You can see that we can open it up and that looks great. Okay, now before we move on with this, let's make the hotbar move to the right because it looks kind of bad right now. So make a for all sprite variable called hotbar x like this. Then in the shopkeeper in the tick position player, we can change this to an if and then put an if else in the bottom here, and we can go ahead and simply check if the shop is open. So if the is shop is open is equal to true, then we'll change hotbar x by 117 minus itself hotbar x times 0.2, so it smooths it out a bit. Then otherwise normally we can just do 0, which is the middle. Okay, so if we show that hotbar x variable, right now it's 0, but if we open up the shop, it should LERP to 117. Yep, there we go. It moves up to 117 and vice versa. Awesome. So now in the inventory, we should be able to move it depending on that variable. So down in the inventory, in the position slot, instead of just pause Y, add on to that hotbar X. So it also moves with the hotbar wherever that is. I can't find it right here. Then in the if ID is equal to letter, set it to the letter X plus hotbar X. Then instead of this pause Y, you also want to do the pause X plus hotbar X. Then last but not least, to make the text get printed out correctly, we want to set the letter X to the X position minus the hotbar X. So that way it takes that into account. Okay, so if we've done everything correctly, the hotbar should actually move to that hotbar X value. Right now it is in the middle, yep, and when we open it, yes, look at that, it moves to the middle and everything works good. Okay, so I have one blade of grass here, and if I open up the inventory, yep, the number and everything follows. Cool, so that is working great. Thank you all so much for watching the 11th episode in the tile game series. I hope this video helped you out. If it did, then make sure you hit that like button and consider subscribing. But anyway, this has been Owen, and I am out.